$45,000. That's how much the HOA president's luxury SUV was worth before my grandpa, a 78-year-old Texas veteran, fed it to his junkyard crusher like it was nothing more than a soda can warning. No argument, just that sound of steel screaming, and this slow, almost peaceful smile spreading across his weathered face. You know what I mean? If you think you've seen petty neighborhood drama, buckle up because this is a tale of old-school grit, entitled bullies, and a legal twist so satisfying you'll wish you'd been there yourself. It all kicked off on what should have been just another peaceful Monday morning in Pine Valley Estates. I was in the middle of my first real vacation in years, sitting on Grandpa Frank's porch, sipping the world's strongest cup of Maxwell House, and listening to stories that always started with, "Back in Vietnam." His porch overlooked Morrison Salvage, the only eyesore in a sea of manicured lawns and two-story McMansions. But to me, it was a museum of memories and rusted American dreams. Frank was rocking away, the sunrise bouncing off that old shed he built with his own hands in '87, when suddenly this white Range Rover came tearing up the lane. Not cruising tearing, like someone trying to make an entrance in a movie, and the plates read Queen 1. My grandpa set his coffee down real slow, like he was back on patrol, told me to get inside, but I couldn't move. Through the tinted glass, I saw her Charlotte Beaumont, HOA president, dressed in something that probably cost more than my first car, stepping out like she owned the very air we breathed. She greeted Frank with a voice so sweet it could rot your teeth, but her eyes were all calculation. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Charlotte Beaumont, president of the Pine Valley Homeowners Association. Lovely to finally meet you." Her smile never touched her eyes, and when she mentioned a small concern about property boundaries, Frank's back straightened, the old soldier surfacing. "That shed's been right there 36 years, he told her, calm as a lake at dawn. But Charlotte just leaned in, offered 60 grand for the land, the kind of money that would buy you a king's ransom in scrap metal. Frank just shook his head. No, that was it. No excuses, no explanations. The air got colder. Charlotte's mask slipped, and suddenly Tommy Rodriguez got out of the car, looking like he'd been carved out of an old football trophy or muscle, not her brains. "Mrs. Beaumont, any trouble here?" he asked, popping his knuckles for show. "No trouble at all, Tommy. Just explaining the way of the world." She gave Frank 72 hours to reconsider, promised compliance inspections if he didn't, then drove off, Range Rover humming like a threat. I wanted to call the cops, the FBI, Batman somebody. But Frank just went to the shed, touched an old claw hammer his late wife Maggie gave him, and said nothing. That night, I started digging online. Charlotte had bought out almost every property in Pine Valley over the last 3 years. Grandpa's salvage yard was the last piece she needed for her big plan, a $50 million luxury resort for rich folks from Dallas and Austin. She was over-leveraged, desperate, bribing city officials left and right. Her emails read like a how-to manual for corruption, and her threats recorded now, thanks to my little side hustle with her unprotected wife, were as clear as day. The next morning, city trucks arrived with stacks of violation notices, demands for inspections, fines that would sink a small country. Grandpa read every letter with the patience of a saint. "This is harassment," I shouted. He just shrugged. "Already called the cops. Civil matter," they said. That's when I realized Charlotte wasn't just pushy, she was dangerous. But then Grandpa showed me the old deed. "You ever heard of salvage rights?" he asked, laying out the yellowed paper like a general with a battle plan. "If someone leaves their property here for 72 hours, it's legally ours." I squinted at the legalese, not sure if I was reading law or poetry. "Who's going to be dumb enough to abandon a $45,000 car on your property?" I asked. Grandpa's smile was like a poker player with aces up his sleeve. "Arrogant people make dumb mistakes, son." Tommy started parking his Honda Pilot right on our line, camera in hand, thinking he was casing us for the next move. But Grandpa just waited for 72 hours to tick by. The harassment didn't stop. Slashed tires, painted threats, rocks through windows. The whole neighborhood started turning against us, Charlotte holding safety meetings in her gaudy mansion, scaring folks with photos of environmental hazards that made our salvage yard look like a post-apocalyptic dump. Funny thing is, while she ramped up the pressure, the small cracks started to show. Tommy, her so-called enforcer, started wavering. Grandpa brought him lemonade one afternoon, helped a neighbor kid with a flat tire right in front of him, treated him like a person, not a pawn. You could see the wheels turning in Tommy's head, like maybe he wasn't the villain in this story after all. Charlotte, though, she doubled down. Petis chendrives, viral videos, a trending hashtag, shutdown de junkyard. But I fought back, built a live stream website, showed the real day-to-day at the yard, Grandpa helping folks, teaching kids, keeping the place cleaner than half the businesses in town. The narrative started to shift. Quiet voices spoke up. Frank had helped them move, fix their cars, never asked for a dime. Even Tommy started spending more time thinking than spying, until one day, he just deleted Charlotte's number and drove off, never looked back. 72 hours later, with Officer Hayes present and the neighborhood watching, Grandpa calmly filed the salvage paperwork, documented every angle, every timestamp, every line of Texas law. Then he walked over to that massive hydraulic crusher, the star of our little operation, and fired it up. You could hear it halfway across the subdivision. Neighbors poured out with their phones. Charlotte came flying in her robe and slippers, shrieking about theft and lawsuits. But Tommy was gone. Hayes reviewed the paperwork ironclad. "Frank, you're within your rights," he said, almost smiling. Charlotte tried everything, offered 50, 100, 200,000, but Grandpa just shook his head. "You spent 2 weeks trying to bully me out of 40 years' work. Some things aren't for sale. Dignity, integrity, justice." Then he lowered the crusher. Metal screeched, glass shattered, and that Honda Pilot folded in on itself, becoming a 2-foot steel cube. 50 grand of arrogance, compressed into one beautiful little block. That's when the real fireworks started. FBI SUVs rolled up, Special Agent Morrison stepping out, reading Charlotte her rights as the whole neighborhood watched. The feds had it all: bribery, fraud, racketeering, thanks to Grandpa's careful records, my digital digging, and Tommy's testimony. Charlotte's empire crumbled overnight. City officials got indicted. The HOA board got sacked. Our salvage yard was cleared of all violations, and the resort project died before it started. The best part? That little metal cube ended up in the Veterans of Foreign Wars Museum downtown, with a plaque: "What happens when bullies meet justice." Tour guides tell the story. Kids love it. Neighbors come by Grandpa's yard for advice or to just sit and swap stories. Even Tommy found redemption, now working as a security guard in an assisted living home, using his size to protect, not intimidate. Looking back, I learned more in those few months than in years of engineering school. How to fight smart, not just hard. How to use the law to stand your ground. And how the quiet dignity of a stubborn old man can bring down a whole castle built on arrogance. Funny twist: 3 months after it all went down, I found the original shed permit. Turns out Grandpa really had built it a few inches over the property line, just like Charlotte claimed. He just grinned when I told him. Been meaning to tear that down anyway, Connor. Let him think they won something, they just saved me the work. You see what I mean? So what do you think? Was justice served? Or was it just old-fashioned revenge? Was Charlotte a monster, or just a casualty of her own ambition? Drop your thoughts below, because I've learned there's always more to the story than what you see from your own porch. And if you ever find yourself staring down a bully, remember, sometimes the best revenge is patience, timing, and a whole lot of Texas law.